Welcome back to Policy in the Wild. Today we have a great guest, Hector Valle. Hector and I met through a friend who's a lawyer, so we're going to hear the perspective of someone who works on policy but also has that legal background. Hector has a new role as the Director of Government Relations for the Texas District and County Attorneys Association. So he's had this amazing career from law to public affairs to, running successful campaigns. And now he serves as the link between state prosecutors and the Texas legislature. So I'm excited for you all to get to hear that intersection of policy and law. So thanks for joining us today, Hector.
Oh, excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Perfect. Well, let's just dig in and start with your new role. And what does the day look like for somebody in your role, especially as the legislative session is starting to gear up? And how do you even prepare for that?
I don't know that anyone can actually be prepared for the legislative session. It is quite a process here in Texas. And so Texas is a little different than Washington, D.C., where they're normally in session. They can pass laws just about any time if they're not in recess. Texas meets once every 2 years. We have a part-time legislature where the senators and the state reps are, only here for 6 months every 2 years on the odd years. So with 2025 coming up in January, they're going to start up, and we have about 40 new House members and about two new senators. And so they're coming in, and normally they file about 6,000, 7,000 bills, 5,000 bills, and only about 20% of them make it through the process. If some of your students remember, and if you remember, the easiest way for me to think about it is the old video of I'm a bill sitting on Capitol Hill. And
We
it's
watched that.
and that video still holds up because it's that it's got to go through the House, it's got to go through the Senate, and then it's got to go through a conference committee, and then the here in Texas, the governor's got to sign off on it. And so getting ready for it, honestly, is probably you just want to bank sleep and spend as much time with your family because it gets going, and then the hours are kind of crazy. And so I'm excited for my role because I'm a former prosecutor, state and federal. I did gang stuff most of my career, and so my role now is to be the liaison between all the prosecutors in Texas and the legislature as they try to accomplish their goals and get good laws that help them serve the residents and the citizens of Texas.
That is awesome. And so, how does your background as a lawyer help you when folks are like writing bills? Are you actually helping with the language of bills? Are you more advising on the legality of things? How does that work?
Doing both, being an attorney, if anyone's ever asking, should I go to law school? My answer is always going to be yes. It's just one of those places where you can go it's still such a generic education that you're able, the way it makes you think. And so you look at grad programs that help you think, when students are looking for programs later on in life, or post undergrad, you want those that just kind of help you get a mindset to help you think and solve problems. That's why I think this program's so great, right? Because it just sets you up for so many different avenues. But no, yes, we help write the laws. As people, we take a look at the bills and say, hey, what are the unintended consequences? What has happened in the past when some of these laws have been trying to pass? And having this prosecutorial background and a legal background, I've seen how these things play out in court and how they play out with police, and how it actually is in effect in the wild, right? In the actual wild, not just a classroom, hypothetical. I've seen it, how it happens and what'll happen, because anytime a law is passed or changed, we look at the penal code, the code of criminal procedure, and just different places where it's going to affect something. And so every bill that comes in, no law happens in a vacuum here, in Texas or in the United States. And so, having that background of being a prosecutor, being a lawyer, understanding how to write bills, because I've been doing this over 10 years now, understanding how the bills are written and the process. And I think what's interesting about going back to that video of I'm just a bill sitting in Capitol Hill, so much happens to that bill as he's trying to get made into law, that it isn't just about writing the bill, but understanding who's going to oppose it and who's going to be for it, and who is going to affect and who is not going to affect. And I think that's a big responsibility for our lawmakers.
Yes, and that I'm so glad you brought this up because we do focus on, the stakeholder analysis as the technical term, really understanding how people, what people think about this, how they're going to vote. Do you have any tips or advice for how you go about either building relationships or understanding your various stakeholders during this kind of process?
Yeah, absolutely. I think number one is you have to build up your integrity. Your word is bond. You don't. I think it starts there. It's like your integrity, your ability to tell the truth to power, to folks, to manage expectations. Someone gives you a bill, and it may be someone very important, or anything, any proposal, and it's not going to work. You just need to kind of explain, hey, this isn't probably going to work. It might work this way, but at the same time, not just give up the problems, but try to give solutions, but understand that you are an honest broker, and you know who the constituents are, who this is going to affect, and why you're coming at them, because it isn't about you personally as a public servant. It's more of like, hey, how is this going to affect Texans? And so
Mhm.
being truthful to someone that may have a great idea, and it may be a great idea, but just the way the process works, it may not be the best way to go about it. And to honestly just be honest at the beginning, because it's so much better just to be honest at the beginning, as opposed to getting down the road and saying, hey, this doesn't work. And then folks going, why didn't you just tell me that in the beginning? We could have changed it. Because what people have to understand with the legislative process is everything's on a time clock. The first 60 days are only emergency items that the governor allows the legislature to pass. And after that, sunny die comes. Sunny die is a Latin term, just means basically here it just means the end. And so there's a certain amount of time that you have to pass these laws. And if it isn't right out of the gate, then you don't have your proponents and your supporters and your heroes for it. It's just not going to pass, because the system's made to kill legislation, not pass legislation, which is understandable. But yeah, I think making sure that people understand that you're an honest broker, you're a person of integrity, and you're going to manage expectations, even if it's from constituents all the way to lawmakers, to let them know, hey, this is my opinion. This is what I think is I've seen it happen in the past. And this might be a different route you may want to take. And have you thought about this? And if at the end of the day they say, yeah, I've thought about that, want to keep going, perfect. Okay, let's see how we can help. How can we help? And I think that's one of the main things is I think as you build your reputation is you have integrity, you're an honest broker, and you're willing to work. And I think that's those are the main things.
Yeah, that seems so true in many places in life. And I liked your phrasing of the heroes for your bill, your legislation, whatever you're trying to do, right? Because you've got to
Yes.
find those. And then there are always the people who don't, aren't in favor of, even if they love you as a person, right? So
Yeah.
I'm curious, you mentioned, these new legislators who are coming to town soon. Do you have any strategies for like how you just start meeting people, or is it really just on the job you come across them? Or are you more proactive and try to reach out to new folks?
I think you have to be 100% proactive
Mm.
and be up there, because once January hits and these folks are new and they're getting it going, it's a mad dash to the end of session. And so you need to be up there early, and making contact. And it isn't just with the elected members, honestly, it's with staff. Staff is extraordinarily important in all these. The elected
Yes.
members have a certain amount of bandwidth, and they divide up their staff with different policy, and getting to know them, even if their member isn't there yet, getting to know the staff and just letting them know, hey, I want to be helpful. This is who I am, and getting up there early. And on a lot of it's just knocking on doors and saying hello and saying, hey, this is just want to be helpful. Because I think if you become the person that comes in late during the process asking for things, it's a lot harder. It's just a lot harder on everybody, and it's a lot more stressful as opposed to just kind of getting out there and trying to meet people. I'm big on coffees. Like let's just grab a coffee, and it might be with the elected official, or it might just be with the staff, and just let's just talk about things before you start asking for anything, and just letting know that you're there to be helpful. Quite honestly, you're just there to be helpful.
Love that. And so I've never worked in Austin, but when I went to law school decades ago, one of my professors was a former legislator, and he said, so you can confirm this rumor for me or not. He said there are like certain bars and coffee shops that you definitely want to. So are there like certain hangouts that to go to and you see all the sort of key players there, or is that a rumor?
No, there's definitely certain places that are near the capital just because of just because of location. But yeah, there's places where you don't want to be, because you might be seen and you don't want to be seen. So I know there's there's definitely places that are very very popular with the capital crowd for sure. That's for sure.
So that's a tip for anybody who's going to Austin soon, figure out where those places are and, start listening in.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at the other side of it because you've been on the campaign side a little bit accidentally. So will you tell us about how you got involved with the campaign side and just tell us about that process of running a successful campaign?
Yeah, for the campaign, there's two types of campaigns. There's the political, and then there's the messaging campaign. And happy to talk about either one. On the political, we first got involved in political campaigns when Toby Shook actually ran for district attorney out of Dallas. Was just a very very low on the totem pole, just a door knocker, which I think is really important experience to get, just kind of get in there and figure out how campaigns look. And then just to be going up to be an advisor, and just with campaigns, you get to see so much. I highly recommend, if anybody can get on a political campaign, for regardless of what race it is, it's an invaluable experience to do. However, on the messaging campaigns, I'm happy to talk about that as well, if that's when we talk about those. When I was at the Texas General Land Office, it's one of the oldest agencies in Texas, and we oversaw so many different things. And one of the things we oversaw was the housing recovery after Hurricane Harvey and the Veterans Land Board. And so some of the messaging campaigns that we needed to get out after Hurricane Harvey was one of the most devastating rainstorms, post hurricane. They dropped about 55 inches of rain. Was that a lot of folks realized that they didn't have flood insurance. And so what we thought was it would be a great messaging to help, not just do the recovery and the reacting, was to be proactive. How do we get folks to buy flood insurance? Because it helps out so much, because, the federal government and the state government can only help out so much, that a lot of the folks that had flood insurance or insurance, obviously were in much better position, as opposed to, relying solely on the state or federal funds. So we did an entire campaign on buying flood insurance that actually, won an Emmy, which until I got involved in that process, I didn't realize you could win Emmys for PSAs and government agencies, which was really incredible. It's the first Emmy the General Land Office had ever won. And the process of that was, we get together as a team. It's like, what is our goal? What's going to be our metrics, and who are we trying to serve, and is it working? And I think if you can continue to evaluate, is this working? That's when you have a successful campaign. And honestly, with a big campaign like that, we hired outside consultants as well to supplement the team, and then just let the creatives be creatives. And then when you look at it, you have to be kind of very critical of what the message looks like. There shouldn't be any sacred things that have to stay in there. If it's not working, it's not working, and everybody has to be open to the criticism of, like, hey, this isn't working, because we're using taxpayers' money, and it's for the taxpayer. So it has to be good, it has to be transparent, and it has to be meeting a very necessary goal. And we did, and we won quite a bit of awards for our efforts to buy flood insurance. And the other one was the Veterans Land Board, where we were trying to get more. One of the things that our agency does is provide loans to veterans so they can buy land or they can buy homes. And a lot of folks don't know that's what this Texas agency does. And it's, for our veterans who've, sacrificed so much for our country and for our state, to have this program. But, a lot of the veterans now are the 9/11 generation. They're younger. They're not sitting around watching TV. They get a lot of their news in a different format. So you have to meet the audience of where they are. Otherwise, you're just kind of, just yelling in the forest. And so, we made sure that there was a lot of social media, ads, the banner ads on YouTube, banner ads everywhere on Facebook, because we wanted to meet the veteran where they were and make sure that it was effective, and not be afraid to call an audible. If something wasn't working, if it wasn't working on a certain social media platform, pull it and let's go to where it is working. And being able to have metrics. Without metrics, then you're just kind of, you don't ever want to waste taxpayer dollars. And so, we're very cognizant of it, and want to make sure that these veterans are getting their benefits, and making sure that they're getting loans. And loans did go up. And so that was what was neat, is like, we were able to get more loans out, and more veterans in homes, and more veterans buying land. And it's just such a great process. So it was nice. You get that whole competitive drive going, where you're winning awards, but you're also, because it's for a good cause, for veterans and for folks to get their houses back together. It was a really neat. And I think that's what goes back to public service, is that, you get so much more out of it on a
Mhm.
daily basis than you know, than maybe in other industries.
Yeah, I think that the last thing you said is so true. And I want to explore your path into public service. But first, I want to ask a follow up about these campaigns because I'm curious. So first of all, the metrics language is music to my ears as a evaluator. It helps you know when you need to pivot. It helps you
Yeah.
know if you're actually making the change you are seeking to make. And so I love everything about that. I wonder, so you go to law school, and everything you read is frankly like really wonky, right? You're reading hundreds of pages a day. It's really dense. You learn to talk in this language. Was it
Yes.
difficult for you to then translate policy and law into a messaging campaign that's very accessible, that's probably like pithy? Did that come naturally to you? Was that hard? And any tools or tricks?
So my journey was a little bit different. That coming out of law school, becoming a prosecutor, that most of
Mm,
my interactions were obviously with attorneys, but mostly with the general public. My
yes.
witnesses, you know, from normal human beings that happen to see a horrible crime or victims of a horrible crime, all the way to medical examiners to police officers. So there wasn't, I guess I wasn't able to form that that language of strictly speaking in legal terms, because it always had to be broken down into folks that didn't do this every day. And explaining to people, you know, with sentences and you know, possibility of parole, possibility of probation, you know, possibility of what they might get in trial, you know, having a police officer explain to me what happened in their language and having them, you know, translate that to juries. Because, you know, I saw a funny meme that one time about juries is like, America's a funny place where you go get 11 of your best friends and they pay you $6 an hour and they're like, come solve this mystery with me, friends, you know, and, and it's kind of true. Right. And so with these strangers that you meet on a Monday and you're there for a week on a murder trial, not only do they have to, you know, build confidence in you and
Yep.
credibility in yourself, you have to build credibility in the case, and it can't be done with lawyer talk. It just can't. It has to be explained in a concise manner where they remember what's going on and why this person is guilty and why they should be punished. And so for me, it was, since I spoke to so many people, having to translate so many different languages, because police officers were telling me, hey, the bullet went in this way and went out that way. And I go talk to the medical examiner, like, I mean, it's possible. I can't tell you it did that just because I'm a doctor and I'm just telling you what I'm seeing. And the officers are like, tell that medical examiner that that's the way it happened. And I was like, I'm just telling you, this is what they're going to explain during the jury. And so you have two translations coming out. And so it's
Mhm.
just to be able to translate what everybody speaks in different industries to just a normal language that everybody can understand. You know, and I don't know if it came natural. It just came as a force, because you have to be able to explain it, and you're communicating constantly with strangers, and building this rapport and building this credibility on those cases. And being in a jury trial, there's no other method of that kind of, you know, forces coming together and having to do it immediately. You know.
I think that's a great analogy for any students or anybody listening, which is imagine you're explaining your position to a jury of sort of normal Americans who may come from different backgrounds, fields, et cetera. And just if you're able to get your policy message crisp enough and condensed enough where they can understand and get on your page, like you're probably in a winning position. So I think that's a great analogy and probably a strength that helped you in winning your Emmy, basically.
Well, you know, also I've heard that, you know, that there's the different things people call the elevator speech. You
Mhm.
know, being able to explain something in 3 sentences. You just, especially in the world we live in now, between X, Instagram, Facebook, you know, Reels, you know, things that are, you know, you just kind of you have to explain it. And honestly, if you're not able to explain your message within a quick elevator ride, it's too complicated, and maybe you don't know it well enough to be able to explain that. You know, and honestly, I
Exactly.
think having kids helps, because kids
Yes.
ask you what you're doing and to be able to explain to them. I mean, if you can't explain it to them, then you may not know it well enough to explain it to others. So because kids are harsh critics. You know, they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, I'm sorry. Let me try that again. You see,
Exactly.
the tax income policy is.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's another great analogy students can use. I love it. Okay, let's talk a little bit about, I mean, how did you even get into this? If public service is something that obviously is something you care very much about, it's part of your DNA. What was your path here?
So A&M Law School, UT, or A&M undergrad, UT Law School, coming out in 2003. It's a great time to come out as an attorney. Great salaries. It's just a wonderful time. Interviewing with different firms. Didn't quite know why I was interviewing with them. I just knew that it was, as from coming from UT, you get a lot of looks from companies because UT has a great reputation, very well deserved. But it wasn't. There was no. Wasn't excited about these interviews. And then I met a classmate of mine, and she said she seemed so calm during the interview process, and she was a year above me. And I said, I asked her, you seem really calm. She goes, oh, I'm just waiting to get on with the DA's office and really excited about that. And I was like, wow. So, and it seemed, she seemed so calm and so happy that when I remember interviewing the DA's office, they asked me like, why do you want to do this? And it was because for self-actualization, you have the pyramid
Mhm.
of needs, and it wasn't, food, shelter. It was the, self-actualization, being part of the solution, being part of the right thing, part of the just fight, and knowing that when I wake up in the morning, the reason I'm getting up is to go do a job to help out my community and be part of the solution. And just and that kind of drove me, even though I was making a third of what most of my classmates were making. They were all wondering like how terrible my grades were. But I was like, I love my job. I'm in a jury trial within a month. I'm helping out my community. I really love it. And a lot of my friends and colleagues that took these very high powered jobs at these firms, I'm sure you had the same, we're within a couple of years, we're out of the law practice altogether, doing other things. It just, it can be a burnout on at some points. And so really enjoyed that part. That really drove me to get up every day, work hard, underpaid, overworked, that kind of like badge of honor. That's just
Yes.
exciting. But because you're doing something really great. And then I'd done it for about 11 years. And my classmate and good friend George P. Bush was running for office, and he asked me to come on and be part of his administration. You always need people with good ethics and someone that's going to quite pick it up pretty quickly. And so Commissioner George P. Bush ran for the Texas General Land Office. It's a statewide elected position, and he won that and brought me into basically Texas politics. And when he asked, I was doing gang stuff, and I was like, wow, Texas politics sounds dangerous. Gangs,
Yes.
gang sounds a lot safer than Texas politics. But we got in, and it was an exciting time between President Trump coming in, and kind of changing the rules of politics in general. Has just been kind of an exciting time, and it really is a great career path, honestly, to get involved in state government and state politics, because it's you're a public servant and you're giving back, and so it was just right up my alley to get involved and help out on a larger scale, as opposed to what we were doing. We were doing this is a much larger scale to get resources out to Texans, and so it was a very natural way to go and continue into public service.
Nothing like a solid mission to kind of beat a lot of that burnout, right? When you
Yes.
believe in what you're doing day to day. So yeah, that's a
100%. And with the land office, we helped out veterans, we helped out, with
yeah.
the coast, we helped out the Alamo, the public school fund, just all the good things. You just know that you're on, you're helping so many Texans out. And one of my favorite quotes is from the movie Troy, or from Gladiator. It's like, what we do in our lifetime echoes throughout eternity. And I think it's one of those things that, you plant these trees that you'll never see shade from. And it's just one of those things that it's just exciting to know that, hey, some of these things that we're doing are going to affect generations of Texans later. And that was such an easy selling point, easy reason to get up early in the morning and stay late and work hard. And so all that was just a great experience.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. All right. Well, we're coming near the end of our time, but if we could do a few tips for students,
Yeah.
and specifically with your background on communications and brand strategy. So we have these master's public policy students, and some of them have amazing policy jobs, but some of them want amazing policy jobs, and they really want to build their credibility and expertise in a particular policy area, or as somebody who really understands policy analysis. Do you have any tips or tricks for grad students who are trying to build their credibility or their brand, for lack of a better word, while they're in grad school?
Absolutely. I think, your network is honestly where I would start is
Mhm.
getting out, getting coffee with people that, just and asking them how they got to where they want. If there's a goal job, trying to reach out to them and say, hey, can I just pick your brain? Just can I grab some coffee with you? Your classmates are an incredible resource, going to UT Law, a lot of my classmates were all very close and were all very helpful to each other. Being an Aggie culture is very much togetherness and just reaching out and having coffee and being involved in your alumni groups as you move out. But just I would start, you start in, right? You start in with your network of your classmates, making sure you know each other really, really well and kind of explain what your goals are. I would not be shy about what my goals are. A lot of folks,
Mm.
are like, oh, my goal, I don't want to, someone's going to think it's too big, or it doesn't matter. Like, you should be very open about what your goals are. And, when you're getting coffee with people, talk about them. I think being active on LinkedIn, following people, posting about things that are interesting to you. I would be very cautious of my social media because every employer now, that's part of the recruiting process, is to do an audit of people's social media. You don't need to post about everything. You just don't. You just don't. You really don't need to post about all your thoughts on social media because someone's gonna find it, and it's not hidden, it's not secret. No matter how private you think your account is, someone has it. And so, but that's what I would start is my classmates, getting to know them, letting them know what I want to do, and then asking, hey, do you know of anybody that's kind of in this industry of what I want to do? And then, in LinkedIn, kind of seeing who is your goal job? What is your goal job? Who holds that now? Or is there a way on LinkedIn that you're connected to them that you could at some point maybe reach out and try to grab coffee and say, how did you get here? People love to help out. And I think that's what, in this day and age where we see a lot of things on social media and the media of people being upset, people genuinely love to help people. And,
Yes.
and they love to reach out. Anytime someone reaches out and say, hey, can someone talk to you about this? I'm always happy. And even in my job searches and figuring out what I was going to do, reaching out to people were always so genuinely nice about, let's grab coffee, let's grab lunch. Yeah, I'd love to talk to you about it, because they're talking about themselves. And they're also would love to give advice because they want to see good people in their industry. Nobody's like, oh man, we need more terrible people in my industry. No one's going to be like that. They want good people that want to be there. And so I think that's where you start is your classmates, just being active on LinkedIn, building up your personal brand and getting to know folks that you're a genuine person.
Mm. That's fantastic advice. And specifically, there's something about a student reaching out. I have never heard of anybody saying no to a student. So I tell students, while you're a student, use that, right? So I'm a student in this program. Would you be willing to give me advice or meet me for coffee or what have you? Is that what you found as well?
100%. It's instant credibility if you're a student. Instant credibility because you are studying it. You have made a commitment to this practice, to this industry, to this profession, and you just want to get to know people.
Yeah.
And people understand that because everyone went through that journey coming out of law school, coming out of grad school, and wanting to know folks, how it all works out, right? And so, I think it's one of those things that. Instant credibility as a student because they know that journey. They know that journey and they're excited someone to reach out to them and how courageous to reach out to someone as a student because that's very rare. And as much as we tell students to do it, it's very rare. And it's an act of courage to do it. And so no one's going to be like, no, I can't do it. And if they can't do it, then you're not any worse off, right? You just move on to another person that might do it. And so it's one of those things that, yeah, absolutely. Instant credibility for being a student, for reaching out.
Mm. Okay, so we're at the end of our time, but I'm going to give you the last word. You can share words of wisdom, closing remarks, books or podcasts you love, whatever you want. You get the last word.
Books I love reading, so I'm always reading up on messaging. A couple of books that I have, I'm always have a stack of books that I've gone through. One of them is Made to Stick that I'm reading right now. This one's called Building a Story Brand. Is fantastic. Those all kind of explain how to tell a story. How to get your story, how to get people to remember what you're talking about, and it's a great on how to build stories from the hero. Who's the hero? And it shouldn't be you. You should be the guy trying to get the person to somewhere where they're trying to get to. They're just great books. If you're looking for political ones, Both of these are great. Jen Psaki, who just got done, and then Tori Clark, who was the comms director, press secretary for Rumsfeld. So Democrat and Republican there. No bias.
Thanks
But
for being
yeah,
neutral. Yeah.
absolutely. Because in politics, there's way more there's more crises that come up, I think, than the private sector. The private sector doesn't deal with crisis as much as in the political sector, because as we've seen with the election that just happened, there's plenty of crises to go around in the political world. So you get kind of training by fire. You're a lot more ready for crises and communicating and messaging and getting out to normal humans, as opposed to sometimes when in the private sector, you kind of have a segment of the population that you're focused on. And so that's why I recommend those two books from those two women, because they actually give you techniques. They don't talk about, they're not trying to tell you to be one way or another in a political party. They're just telling you what worked for them. And these are some of the techniques. And there's some of the few books that I've seen that aren't just repeating what they did, and how great they were. It's more of like, these are the techniques that I used during that time. And I think they're great. But Building a Story Brand and Made to Stick, those are fantastic books on honestly getting your message to stick to people. And it kind of goes back to that elevator pitch, telling a good story. Storytelling is so important. If you can tell a good story, people are going to stay interested and remember your message much better. It needs to be a story. And that's what we tell a lot of these prosecutors is, if you're coming in here with a bill, why does that bill have to happen? And it can't be, let's get into the, like you said, lawyer talk. It needs to have a story. Like, what is the story, and what is the problem, and how is the legislature the hero to solve the problem? Because it helps people remember it. It gets sticky is the buzzword these days.
Exactly. That is a perfect place to end today. I put those books on my reading list, so thank you.
Yeah.
And that's the critical piece. You can be the best policy and analyst, the best lawyer in the world, but if you can't get your message across, then you're not going to be able to advocate and make progress for what you want. So, perfect place to end. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.